Peter, when it comes to the smart rooms, obviously, we've just talked about what's available now. What's likely to happen in the future? And maybe as we talk about it, we should define a couple of terms for our audience, like IoT, it's probably the main one, AI, and voice. What do we mean by those terms? And what are we going to see in the room of the future?
Yeah, okay. So IoT is an interesting one. I mean, again, IoT is a fairly broad term, but certainly the collection of data from different data points within a room, and a typical room for us will have, might have 5 or 6 or 7 switches,
Yeah.
1 or 2 motion sensors, you've got thermostats, you've got blinds, and so on. So all of that provides an insight into that ecosystem and how that room's being used. From that, running AI can all of a sudden provide some sort of insights and into what's the right way for that room to be the most efficient. So, for example, if a hotel's facing west, it would make sense for those windows or those window coverings to be closed, or at least the shears to be closed in the afternoon when the sun's the brightest, or beaming on the building. Again, minimises the heat load. So AI can make some of those decisions for the hotel without really impacting the guest's comfort too much, particularly if they're not in the room. IoT and AI is something, certainly AI is something that is being deployed by some of the bigger manufacturers, and looking at what sort of smarts they can put in the background to make some conditional logic and some smart decisions and some predictive information. IoT, there are some systems out there now that are very much based on the IoT model. In other words, the motion sensors, the reed switches on doors, the thermostats are all IP6 based. They all go back to the cloud.
Yep.
They still operate on their own. So if the internet wasn't there, they do still operate, albeit in a reduced capacity. So there's a bit of that technology coming out. And interestingly enough, that the system I'm thinking of there is probably the most easy to retrofit of any of the systems. It's phenomenal.
Okay.
So, there are some of these systems that are starting to evolve that are making use of that in the real sense, not just IoT is a bit of a catchphrase, and often, we have a gateway to an internet of things where, there's a whole bunch of sensors on a building and they just run through one connection to the internet. It's not probably what people had in mind when they said IoT, but, it does ultimately achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
You asked a question about other things that we're likely to see in hotel development.
Exactly.
One of the things we're seeing, and it's been around for a while, is circadian lighting. So the hotels are all very comfortable with LED lights and the color temperature of the room, which is the color of the lamps in the room.
Yep.
Well, IoT is still using LED and other technologies, but LED, that the color temperature shifts during the day. And what that does is a cool white, so the very white light that you see in some buildings is very good for pepping you up and keeping you awake. Well, that might be something that you use during the day, but in the morning when you wake up and in the evening, or if you want to have an afternoon nap, it moves to a warmer white, which is a lot more relaxing. It promotes sleep. We're starting to see, we do a lot of work in other industries, and that's starting to become quite common in aged care and hospitals because it promotes a healthy environment. Certainly in the aged care environment, it helps residents relax. And hotel rooms are very similar. It's an environment you've gone into if you're working, come off a flight, you want to have an afternoon kip. Well, you can turn into an environment that actually promotes, relaxation and sleep.
And is that based on artificial intelligence, or is it the guest setting the scene that they would like a, as you said, a more relaxed ambience within the room? How does that work?
At the moment, it's generally based on scenes or presets. In other words, it follows the day. So in the morning, it'll be a warmer temperature, which sort of relaxes you when you wake up. It doesn't sort of hit you with a horrible white light. During the day, it's much brighter, so it keeps you alert and awake. And then in the evening, so if you were to turn your lights on at any time of the day, it would go to what has been pre-mapped into the system. But there's nothing stopping these systems then shifting that depending on the time zone that you'd like to be in. So, you know, at midnight, it might be a much whiter light if you're working, you're about to get on a flight and you want to be woken up. So all that's very achievable.
Interesting. Okay. And voice, I mean, you said, we talked about voice being, in a sense, available on a lot of systems now as an add-on.
Yep.
Are we going to see a lot more voice in rooms, you think, in the future?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think certainly initially it's going to be, depending on the chains and their demographic of guests. So, you know, hotel chains that are pitched towards a younger demographic are going to be the first adopters, you know, purely and simply because that's the technology they're used to. So anything that's digital, anything where you bring your own device, that's definitely going to be the first, you know, cab off the rank as far as uptake. And it's happening in a few projects. Where we've seen it, it's often been in selective rooms, only I think because they're almost testing the waters. I don't think anyone's, I haven't seen it where it's been rolled out and everyone loves it and everyone uses it. So I think it's generally selective areas. And I think just, you know, like with any other technology, it'll become mandatory in you know, certain chains will adopt them, and they will start to be rolled out. Having said that, pretty much any of the systems that are out there today, or any of the major ones, have the ability to have voice added to them. So it's not something that once it's in, or once you put a control system in, that's it, you can't go back to it. You can always upgrade.
That makes sense too, doesn't it?
Yep.